Good evening. So tonight I'm going to tell you about the water spider and how fire came to our world via the Cherokee legend. So the tale goes is that the world was dark and cold. It was unbearable at nighttime. The animals would get really cold and they were in need of something to warm them. So the thunder saw this and he said, I need to do something. So he told the lightning, strike this sycamore tree on this island, give them fire. So the lightning struck a sycamore tree in the middle of this island, on this in the middle of this huge, massive lake, and the animals, they saw this and they all rushed to the shore and they were like, it kind of looks like the sun. So they were saying, well, the sun is warm, so that must be warm. So the animals had a council and they said, well, we need somebody to bring it back to us, to the land, to the mainland. So the animals had their council and they were like, well, who could go get this? Who is strong, who is brave enough to go and get this thing that looks like the sun that could warm us? And the raven said, I'll go. Now the raven in those days wasn't black. The raven was like a rainbow color. So the raven flies across the lake, gets to the island, and he lands on the sycamore tree, and he's looking down at this stuff, and the smoke is getting in his face and burning him, and he says, well, I got to swoop down and grab it, kind of like the smoke is doing to me now. But so the raven swoops down to the tree, and when he does that, the soot and the smoke comes up and covers his whole body, and it singes him and it burns him as it's popping and flaring up. And he swoops down and he feels all this and he flies away and he's like, ouch, that hurt. He flies back to the mainland to where the animals are, and he says, he's like, I'm scared. I can't go back. I can't go. Something happened to me. And they were all looking at him and they were like, who is this? Who is this bird who is all black? And he says, it's me, it's Raven. I don't know what happened, but it burned me. So they, and that's how, if break from the story, but that is that's how the raven got black. And if you hold a feather up to the sun or the light, you can see the rainbow still in there. But so the animals were like, well, who can go next? Who is strong enough? Who's able enough to do this? And Owl says, I'll go. So the owl, wise and stealthy, goes out and he's flying across the water. Flies across the water, gets to the tree. He's like, well, I'm not going to do like Raven. He said, I'm going to be wise and peer in at it and see what I can see, and maybe devise a plan from there. So the owl finds a nice crack in the tree, and he's looking in the crack, and he's looking in there, and all of a sudden a gust of wind hits the bottom of the tree, and flames flew up, and all the smoke and soot went around his eyes, and got it all in his eyes, and he was rubbing his eyes, and he trying to see, and he was trying to fly back to see, but his eyes were red. And that's why when you shine light into an owl's eyes nowadays, they're red. So the next animal to go was the bear. And the bear was like, well, I'm strong and I'm a good swimmer. He was like, I can get across this lake and get over there and get this fire and bring it back so we can have warmth. So the bear swims across the lake, gets to the tree, and he finds a crack in the tree, and he wiggles his way in there, and he crawls in there, and he gets in there, and he gets a big gust of wind, and it flares up, it burns him, and he's covered in soot, and he gets back in the water, and he swims back, and he's like, I can't do it. And that, coincidentally, is why black bears are black. In the Smoky Mountains, the bears there are black, the black bears. And that's the legend of how the black bear got black as well. So they're all just trying to figure out who's brave enough to go out there and get this. And they hear a small little voice and it says, I'll go get the fire. And they're looking around and they're wondering, who is this? Like, we don't see anybody. And Bear is like, who is this? Who's speaking? And the little voice says, look down. And they look down and there's Grandmother Spider. She's sitting there and she's like, I'll go get the fire. I'll go get it. I know I can do it. And they're all laughing at her and they're saying, yeah, you're too small. You can't possibly carry back that. It would, you know, it burned bear, it burned raven, it burned owl. There's no way a spider could bring it back. So she says, I can do it. Just give me a chance. So the little spider, she dances across the water back and forth like spiders do, and she gets to the tree and she says, well, I can't go in it. I'm not going to climb the tree because that's how raven and owl got burned. So she sits there for a minute and she thinks, and she's like, I know what I'll do. She starts weaving a web into a bowl. She gets this bowl and she has this bowl of web, and then she gets some mud. She lines the web with mud. She's like, I'll just put it in here and carry it on my back. So she takes a small little ember, she puts it in that bowl, and away she went. She crossed back across the lake. She gets back and Bear is like, whoa, where's this thing? Where's this flame? She said, well, I noticed that every time the wind blew, it got bigger. So she took some little sticks and she put them all there, and she put the little ember in there, and she blew on it, and the flame flew up, and all the animals were amazed. And that's how fire came to be in the Cherokee legend. And the moral of that story, because every Cherokee story has a moral, is that no matter how small, no matter how insignificant, no matter how tiny or weak someone may seem, doesn't mean they are. And they can oftentimes surprise you. Just because someone is not what you think they are or who you think they are, doesn't mean they can't do magnificent things. So that's just what I take from that story. And there's many more stories that I can share with you guys, but that was always one of my favorites. And that's why I like the water spider symbol so much, other than it being widely used in our culture back in the Mississippian era, and still today. If you go to Cherokee, North Carolina, and go to the museum, there's this massive carving of one on a rock. It's just like my shell, almost exactly like my shell that I did. But I always really liked that story because I always felt when I was younger I was the underdog, and that people thought I couldn't do things, or even myself, I would think that I couldn't do things, and I wasn't, strong enough or whatever. And I did a lot of things. I've accomplished a lot of things in life that I didn't think I could do. So, don't ever underestimate yourself, and don't ever underestimate other people just by the way they look. So that's going to be it. And hope you guys enjoyed the story and the campfire. And it's not really a campfire. I'm in my backyard, but I couldn't really travel that far because I worked all day today. But you guys have a really good night, and thank you for joining me. And if you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing. And you guys have a great night, and I will talk to you on the next one. Stay safe out there, and yeah, never mind. Stay safe.